This isn't junior high, and so I expect you to contribute, be part of it. And if you remember when we went over the syllabus, remember this? What's that refer to? Participation, being here, being part of it. That's the same as a test grade. It's the same way as one of your exams. Right? You have 4 exams, each worth 15%. This is worth 15%. And you have your final exam, which is worth 25%. Okay, so it's there for you. You have the option of the extra credit paper if you want to do that as well. Okay, so it's there for you. Whether you take it or not, that certainly is up to you. All right. Any of you have family members who have arthritis? You think of it, I'm not that old, and this weekend, I got it, I have it, it's been dormant, but this weekend it's like in both wrists. And if your family members tell you, have they described it to you? It's like a throbbing, it's like a burning, and God, it hurts like hell. So my writing is a little not up to par today. That's why. Okay, I just want to let you know. Okay, let's start by defining this. Psychology. What is psychology? How many of you took psychology in high school? Any of you? Nobody here took psychology in high school? I did. Okay, I think you did. All right, what is psychology? How would we define it? Good job. All right, it's human behavior. Take it a step further. Jaya? Any idea? All right, what kind of study? Scientific study. That's what we need, scientific study. It's the scientific study of the mind and behavior. It's the scientific study of the mind and behavior. I mentioned to you guys about flashcards, right? You have terms. I really hope you consider it because they work. It's an easy way to study. It's an easy way to study. A scientific study of the mind and behavior. In fact, if you break it down, that means the mind. And you hear psyche. Or so, if I said, what does psycho mean? You'd say, somebody's off the wall, No, psyche is, psycho or psyche refers to the mind. And ology refers to the study of. So it's the study of the mind and behavior, the scientific study. And we talked about this the other day, that we have exact sciences, we have inexact sciences. This is an inexact science because it's open to interpretation, but it is a science. And as such, requires data. And so we have this. Empirical evidence. How many of you heard of the term empirical evidence before? Ever heard of it? It basically means data or information gathered from observation and measurement. Data or information gathered from observation or measurement. Okay. Data that can be gathered through observation or measurement. Now, psychology has only been around as a science since 1879. In 1879, a guy by the name of Wilhelm Wundt, I'll put it on the board for you here, a guy by the name of Wilhelm Wundt. Question? Question? opened the first psychology lab. And it was in a place called Leipzig, Germany. Leipzig, Leipzig, Germany. Now, what was significant about this is that up until that time, when people talked about behavior and why people did the things that they did, it was basically conversation. It was more philosophical. We're going to talk about philosophy. If we don't get it today, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. And philosophy simply involves logic and reasoning, but it doesn't involve gathering information or data. And psychology does. And that's what Wundt did. He and his colleagues began to gather information and write it down so they had data. And thus, psychology was born as a science. Okay? It doesn't mean that people didn't wonder what was going on prior to that. They did. And they had theories, and we're going to talk about some of those theories and some of those reasonings that people use to try to understand behavior. But it wasn't until Wilhelm Wundt in 1879 came up with this whole concept of psychology. That we're going to write things down. Now we've got information that's there. All right? Now, why do we study psychology? Well, there are 4 basic goals of studying psychology. Why do we do it? The first, we describe behavior. The first goal in studying psychology is to describe a behavior. Describe it. I want you to think of an event that's occurred that we've looked at and said, wow, that's really weird, or God, I can't believe they did that. So the event that I use is one that you may not have heard of. How many of you heard of Columbine High School and the massacre at Columbine High School? Few of you have, right? How many of you never heard of Columbine High School? All right. Happened about 20 years ago. God, that seems, when you say 20 years, some of you, how many of you were 20 years old or less? Who's 20 years old? Oh my God, I'm talking about this. You will have heard, you will hear of it. First name is?
Brian.
Brian, tell us what happened at Columbine High School. Let's just describe. We don't want the reasons why, but just describe what happened.
The short version.
Yeah.
2 students of the school, they basically shot up the school and killed, I think, almost 20 kids and teachers.
Yeah. 2 kids walked in on a Friday morning. They had trench coats on. They had weapons. They walked in, and they apparently had a hit list, and they started shooting people, killing people. And the students, you know, the rest of the students got out of there, the whole bit. They ended up killing people, then they killed themselves. And that's the short version. We're describing what happened. Does everybody understand? You describe the behavior. This is what happened. All right? The second goal is to understand or explain the behavior. Now, that does not mean that you have to agree with it, but you're going to understand or explain why it happened. All right? You know, it's funny, when I write on the board, when I'm writing it, it looks so good. And then I get back here and I think, oh my God. All right, Brian, explain it, understand it. Why did they do it? Do you remember?
They were being, I guess, bullied, and that's what caused them to shoot up the school.
Yeah. They had been bullied and ostracized, the whole bit. And they just finally blew it. And again, I just did a I just did a class in the Psych of Violence and Terror, and somebody did a presentation on it, and we went into a little bit more detail about them. One of them was actually the ring, the other one was a follower. But that's basically what happened, is that they had been bullied and pushed around, and they felt that they wanted to get retribution. Okay? Third step, we're going to predict the behavior. And this is very simple. What are the chances it could happen again? Well, we have the answer to that, don't we? Has it happened again? Several times. The most heinous one was Newtown, Connecticut. How many of you remember Newtown, Connecticut? This guy was, very disturbed. Came into an elementary school and executed kindergarten kids and first graders.
New York.
Connecticut. Is that what you said, New York?
Or Sandy Hook. Are you talking about Sandy Hook?
Sandy Hook, I thought you said New York.
Oh, no.
I said, yeah, in Newtown, Connecticut. Sandy Hook School. It's funny, I was teaching at Endicott at the time, and I had a student there who had graduated, a few years prior, had gone to that school. And basically what happens, they tore the school down. There was just too many memories. They tore it down, rebuilt it, the whole bit, because it was there. But anyway, we know what's happened. It happened in Virginia Tech. It's happened in other places. It almost seems like every month we hear about somebody who comes into a school. And wasn't there one just the other day? Last week, I thought I heard of one the other day. We've had banks, we've had movie theaters, we've had concerts in Las Vegas. I'll be honest with you, I'm a Red Sox season ticket holder, and I enjoy going to sporting events and things. But I'll be sitting in my seats in Fenway sometimes with 35,000 people there, and thinking to myself, wow, what a target this would make. How many of you went to Fenway last year? Anybody go to Fenway to the Red Sox? You went through, you go through security now, which, they never had. When I first started going, they never had that. But now they do, and it's for your, it's for your safety, the whole bit. All right, so we've got describing the behavior. This is what happened. Why did it happen? What can we, is there a possibility that it could happen again? And then the fourth is to control the behavior. Now again, mostly there wasn't anybody here that was in school when that happened, is there? That remembers what happened? Brian, how old are you?
I'm 33.
All right, so you probably,
I was around when it happened too.
how old are you?
I was 24, but I was 5 when it happened.
All right, 5, so, it has a little bit of an
Well,
impact.
they changed it.
33, your school probably reacted to it, didn't they? What did they do?
No, when it happened, we talked about it a lot after.
I can remember I was teaching at ULowell, and I had a social psychology class. There were about 50 kids in the class. And it happened, I believe, on a Friday, Thursday or Friday. And so, when I start class, I like to, just open with something that's not heavy, just sort of a discussion thing. And so I just mentioned, did any of you happen to hear the news? And quite a few of them had. And so we started talking about it. And what I wanted was about a 5-minute discussion. I ended up with a week. It was a 3-day-a-week class, and what we did, they got into this discussion, and they wanted to do some projects on what they could do to identify and deal with these types of things. I had one kid who was an athlete, said, when I go to lunch, there's this one kid that's in one of my classes, and I notice it every day. He's sitting by himself. He said, It wouldn't kill me to go over and sit down and have lunch with them once in a while. And, you know, kids came up with these kind of concepts, because what brings this about, something like this about? This feeling of isolation, that nobody notices me, nobody cares about me, I'm insignificant. And we started talking, and it was a week project, and it was fabulous. And these kids, and it wasn't a situation where they were just killing time, they were really into this thing, which I thought was really, really important. Another incident similar to this was Matthew Shepard. How many of you know who Matthew Shepard was? Brian? I feel like we're having a conversation. That's all right. See, we're apart, so now everybody's gonna be between us now here. Did you ever hear of Matthew Shepard? Who was he?
He was a kid who was killed for being gay.
Yep. Okay, let's describe the situation. We'll use the state formula here. All right, he's a young guy. First name is? Yeah. Alan, do you remember?
Yeah, I know what happened. I don't remember like specifics. I do know that it was more than just like killed. He was being severely
he was
die, and then he died.
What happened was he had gone to a bar, gay bar, and there were these guys that were there that hated gays, and so they kind of flirted with him a little bit and got him to go with them. And then what they did is they tortured him and tied him to a fence with barbed wire and things like that, and he eventually died. And I can remember when that happened, I was teaching at ULO. I was actually teaching a course in abnormal psych when that occurred. And something like that, some people might say, well, that's the gay community's issue, it's not my issue. And my thing to the kids was, yes, it is your issue, it's all of our issues when something like that happens. And that happened, and the next week we had a class, and we started talking a little bit about that. I happened to mention, I said, tonight at 7 o'clock, class ran from like 5:30 till around 9:30, it's like a 4-hour class. I said, at 7 o'clock you're having a vigil. And if anybody wants to go, we'll go. If you don't want to go, you don't have to, we'll just take a break. I said, I'm gonna go over for half an hour, and if anybody wants to come, the whole class went. And again, most of the people that went to that weren't gay. It was just something this is something that we as a culture need to understand. That this type of behavior is not appropriate, and it can't be tolerated. Who knows, the next time I might be going after somebody because they're Jewish or because they're Catholic. That stuff has happened in history, hasn't it? And so, this is the type of thing. So let's get back to number 4 then, controlling the behavior. What do you do? Could it happen again? Predicting? Yeah, it could. What do? We make people aware of things. Now, some schools were reactive. Reactive means something happens, and so we respond to that incident. We react to it. And some schools did things like put in metal detectors and, have police officers walking. How many of you came from a high school where you had police officers visible? Anybody during the day? Or any of you go to schools that you had metal detectors you had to come through? Yeah. Basically, a lot of that was a response to this. Or sometimes schools became proactive. In other words, all right, it hasn't happened here. What can we do to make sure it doesn't? And it's not just having a metal detector or having a police officer. What they decided to do is say, let's see if we can identify potential issues here. And so they started having programs which made people aware of issues that were going on. They made sure, teachers, for example, and I'm going to be honest with you, teaching is not easy. It's really not. And one of the toughest things in teaching, wasn't there somebody here that was going to teach? One of the toughest things when you're teaching is to include everybody. Mass, right? What's the first name?
That's it.
Yeah. Put our phone away from me. Next one. One of the toughest things is to get everybody involved. You know, teachers, for example, when they have discussions, and I have found myself doing this once in a while, so I really work on not doing it, is like you have a class discussion and there's maybe 2 or 3 kids who are in the discussion, so when you have that discussion, you just talk to those 2 or 3 kids. Have you ever noticed that in classes sometimes? That when you have discussions, it seems like there's only a handful of kids that are involved. Have you ever noticed that? And one of the toughest things with teaching is to get everybody involved. That's why I'll call on you. That's why I want you to get your hands in the air. I don't want it to be just 2 or 3 people that are talking, okay? So, you know, that's really a tough thing. And so getting people involved, including people. There was a girl, stand up for a second. There was a girl in this class whose hair was this color. I am not lying to you. Blue, like, so you know what she did? She raised her hand, she said, Professor Grace, can I say a word? I said, sure. She says, well, you all might have noticed that I'm probably a little bit different. I mean, I'm not lying to you, it was that color blue on her hair. And in a way, you know, people are different, there are differences. But that's what makes it an interesting world, is that people have different things that contribute. If we were a cookie cutter world, it'd be pretty dull, wouldn't it? It's like when people get involved in relationships. You know, you say, oh, God, I'm going out with this person and she's exactly like me. I suppose that has its merits on one level, but wouldn't it be interesting if she was a little bit different in some ways so that we could contribute, you know, to this type of thing? It's the same in classrooms, it's the same in the workplace, wherever it is. So anyway, we had this situation where in Columbine, in Sandy Hook, in you know, any one of these things that are going on, we describe the behavior, we try to explain it, this is why they did it, predict it, and control it. Okay, this is what psychology does. This is why it's there. Somebody in this day and age, somebody is arrested for a crime, a weird crime. One of the first things they do is they go for a psych eval. By the way, did you hear the story this morning about the incident on the Mass Pike? You know where the toll booths used to be, the Mass Pike? Apparently there was a bumper thumper, and these 2 guys started arguing, and one guy refused to exchange papers, so the other guy got in his car to go, and the other guy jumped on the hood of the car. Did you hear about Chris, right?
Yeah, I saw the
Hear about this? I haven't seen the video, I can't wait to get to work and do it. 3 or 4 miles on the Mass Pike, 70 miles an hour. And finally, some cars blocked him off, and then there was one guy that had a permit to carry, and he got out with his gun and held him at bay for it, and they're both being arraigned today. The guy in the car obviously is gonna get the worst of it, who was driving, but the other one wasn't, something wrong there to jump on a car and say, hey, I get this, the guy that jumped on the car was 65 years old. We're not talking about a 20-year-old who, you know, had a mind cramp. You know, we're talking about somebody who should have known better. So it wasn't there. All right.